My name is Amy Pavlina. Today I'm going to go over with you Passport to Social Studies, Grade 4, Unit 4, Day 6, the Bill of Rights. And for this lesson, I'm going to just give you some quick information that you're going to need to review and embed to help students understand why a Federalist like James Madison is pushing the Bill of Rights. So let's get started on the Bill of Rights. And we have to really drill into students' heads that the Bill of Rights are limiting the power of the government while still protecting the people, while still providing a strong central government, stronger than the states. So it's a little complicated. So the main takeaway for this lesson that you really need to drive home with students is that James Madison is playing it up for the votes. He's a Federalist, but he knows in order to be elected eventually for president, he needs to give in to the anti-Federalist and his beliefs, the Federalist, because he needs those votes. And he's not going to get those votes unless the people think that they're getting power, and the people who want the government, central government, to have power think that they're getting power. He needs to make that big compromise in order to make everyone happy, which is going to guarantee him votes. So you should be reviewing with students what a Federalist is before going into this lesson, and that the Federalists think that the Constitution's fine. The Constitution already prevents federal and state governments from becoming too strong, and that they're not going to violate basic liberties. And an anti-Federalist at this time, they think that that Constitution needs to be flexible. They're not signing off on anything unless it's flexible. They think that the Constitution needs to allow for change, and they think that a central government is given too much power. The people are really going to be overtaken, and they could really lose their freedoms and liberties very quickly. But the voters at this time, they're going to attach to the protection for the people. And James Madison knows this. So when he was against this before, now he's turning the tables. He's going to really push for this Bill of Rights to be passed. And you're going to come to this at the beginning of the lesson. You're going to go into the quote for James Madison. And another key takeaway that you're going to have to really drive home with students for this lesson is why a Bill of Rights anyways? The Constitution describes the roles and responsibilities of the government, but the Bill of Rights is describing the rights and freedoms of the people that this government's supposed to be protecting. The Constitution is limiting the power of the government, but the Bill of Rights is still granting that authority to the people that you have these basic rights. James Madison, again, knows that in order to get elected, as well as ratify the Constitution with all the states, he needs the compromise put in of the Bill of Rights for the anti-Federalist. So let's take a look at the lesson. So here's the lesson from Teach Hub, and going into it, we come across this introduction model. Now, the first thing we notice with this model is it's a lengthy quote, and it has a lot of heavy language. So what I like to do with my students is I like to break it apart into line by line, much as if it were kind of like a poem, and have the students interpret what each line means. And you could do this on Jamboard. So let's take a look to see what that would look like right now off a Jamboard. So what you would do to make a Jamboard is you would go into Google and come up here to your waffle and click on Jamboard and click on a new jam. I already have one set up. So I have the quote here. And now what you could do in Jamboard is you're going to open up the text box, or you could do it on sticky notes, whatever you prefer, and just take it line by line for each page or split it up into sections for your students. So let's take a look to see what that would look like. So I've split up the lines as the Constitution may be amended, and I want students to think, what do these lines mean in your own words? I would do this at the beginning of the lesson before even reading the quote altogether. I think that by doing this, you're getting students to kind of get engaged and start thinking about what the quote is saying before actually attacking that quote and going through it. If all power is subject to abuse, then it is possible the abuse of the power of the general government may be guarded against. in a more secure manner than is now done, we have in this way something to gain, and if we proceed with caution, nothing to lose. So going through this, have your students really try to collaborate and think about what do these lines mean. After you do this, I would come back to the quote in the lesson, and let's take a look to see what's next for this lesson. Interpret first. It's going to make a lot more sense for your students to understand the phrases that are being used in the actual quote. So if you go into where he's saying that all power is subject to abuse, that means, what does it mean that power could be subject to abuse? How can power even be abused? You have to really have students interpret the lines first in order to be able to answer these questions or to contribute to a class discussion for these questions. Why do you think James Madison believed we have something to gain by adding a Bill of Rights? You have to do a little bit more of embedding that pre-knowledge that Madison was a Federalist. Now he knows he's going to want to go up for election. He has to really give compromise to the Anti-Federalist and the Federalist. And this is why he proposes the Bill of Rights. That's the backstory of the Bill of Rights. He knows that it's not going to get ratified unless he's giving way to both sides of the argument, and he's going to help himself along the way if he gets the people going for him too, right? And why do you think Madison wanted to proceed with caution with adding a Bill of Rights? So again, you really want to emphasize that Madison was a Federalist. He thought the Constitution was the end-all be-all. But he knows, again, you have to tread really lightly with adding all of these open interpretations to the rights of people when deep down he thinks the Constitution's fine. It is as it is. It does its role, and it's protecting the strong central government. You're then going to go back into the timeline of the Constitution where you have the preamble, the Articles 1 to 7, and now you're going into the Amendments 1 through 10, which is the Bill of Rights being added, and students are going to do this during independent work today. Then down the line, after the Bill of Rights are added, you're going to have Amendments 11 through 27, which are going to be granting a lot of rights to everybody. So you really want to go into that the Amendments 1 through 10, the Bill of Rights, are going to lead to those amendments down the line, 11 through 27, those big ones that are giving power to the people to live and have the basic liberties of all in the United States, not just to some. And that's what's going to frame our whole entire Constitution of what we see in 2021. So here's the independent work for students. And for the independent work, I would really emphasize that students are only going to choose 3 of these cards to do, and you're going to come back as a class. In my next video, I'm going to show you how you can make kind of like a jot lot for students to put their information and their scenarios down for their cards, and you could share out. Close of our lesson. One of the big takeaways is the collaborative discussion. So after students are able to get that jigsaw approach to what scenarios they found and what they thought could be the answer for each scenario, you really need to get down to why is it important to know the rights that the Bill of Rights gives you. And you really have to drive home, again, that the Bill of Rights are to protect the liberties of the people, whereas the Constitution is outlining what the role of the centralized government would be. And that this Bill of Rights, along with amendments down the line, are giving the powers back to the people to give everyone a more equitable life in the United States as time progresses. The Bill of Rights is meant to protect everyone in America. Do you think that is the case today? So looking at only those 1 through 10 amendments, the first 1 through 10, the Bill of Rights, you really need to ask students, do you think that this is giving everyone the rights? Is it outlining who has rights in America at this time? You have to really get your students into that mind frame of being during that era. And it's really hard for them to think, oh, what do you mean someone wouldn't be able to own land? Oh, what do you mean someone wouldn't be able to vote? Someone wouldn't be able to go to school. Someone wouldn't be able to do any of the liberties that they think that everyone used to always have in the United States because it's a land for the free. You have to drive home that this is a gradual liberty for all in America, which still isn't perfect. So I hope this has been helpful as an outline to this lesson, as some of the ideas you could use for instruction. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to make a jot lot for students to put those scenario cards as they're coming back from independent instruction back to the summary and the wrap up for the lesson.